At the time of typing this, I have no idea how long this video will be. I just know that I need to get all of my thoughts out about the information released. I would have got this video out quicker if I could have, but I've just been too busy at work. I made most of my Mod 16 predictions back in October after the devs hosted their Ask Me Anything thread on the official r/Neverwinter Reddit. When I summarize information that I see here, I'm not just taking it at face value. I'm reading in between the lines and basing it on several months worth of information that I've gathered from different locations. Also, I don't want this video to get a lot of attention, but it would be great if you use some of the points I bring up as conversation pieces amongst your friends at some point. Okay, first quote. Class balance is an important part of how fun our game is, and some classes have developed clear advantages. Just to elaborate a bit here, when they say clear advantages, what they probably mean in PvE terms is power sharing or other buff mechanics that give certain classes an edge when deciding who you should take with you on an adventure. Currently, both DC and OP share power, so there's basically no reason to currently ever run without both of them. Unless it's cutting off your ear to spite your face, that type of situation. There are also many other classes that offer a variety of buffs that give them a clear advantage when it comes to the question of which class should I ask for to make my party the best. But the summary here is we must balance all classes to be exactly the same, at least in terms of all healers being equal, all tanks being equal, and all DPS being equal. This way no class has a clear advantage over another. Should I pick the OP healer, the DC healer, or the SW healer? It doesn't matter, just pick a healer, you're good. But what's the problem? Well, this is impossible. There will always be one class that outperforms the rest, when in the hands of an experienced player at least. But what actually defines best, that may change. For example, right now it means buff output. That's what makes you the best. But in the future, it may just mean that any class that performs its role while also providing DPS. Okay, so oftentimes an entire feat tree wasn't worth taking. That's the quote. Basically, we'll make sure there are no bad decisions anymore. But the problem with that is, hey, there are no more decisions. There won't really be decisions. And mathematically speaking, there's even a most efficient way to tie your shoes. So in terms of time actually spent tying the laces, likelihood of the laces coming untied based on the material of the laces and the type of shoe, and depending on who you are, no laces at all, or Velcro might be the meta for you. But what's more than that? So what if there was a feat tree that wasn't worth taking? Guess what? That's how learning works. Sometimes you make bad decisions, and later down the road, you come to the realization that, holy crap, I made a bad call. I could have been doing that way better. And then you grow as a person and a player, and it builds a sense of connection to the game. Like, hey, I'm actually progressing. This feels good. Learning is fun. Okay. Yeah. Alright, feat trees no longer exist. Paragon Path will have 5 pairs of feats. Power points will be removed. To summarize this, basically, as you level, once in a while you'll be presented with an option to choose between 2 things. Okay, this is a problem. This is a problem because there will be no decision-making process as you level up. Players will not be challenged to think, because they won't have to think. With no power points, there's never any risk of it. There's no risk of investing in the wrong thing. 5 pairs of feats just means that when you hit a certain level, you choose either A or B. 5 different times as you go. And if there's no bad choice because of balance and all that, then who really cares? There's no risk at all. There's no wrong choice. With only 5 actual choices to make from level 1 to 80, none of your decisions are important. Nothing you do matters, and players will never actually establish a sense of earning their worth in terms of character creation. Okay, splitting more of the powers between the 2 paths. Summary? You won't have the tools that you used to have. You'll have access to half of what you used to have based on your paragon of choice. And obviously this is a problem because now we have half the options. Think of what the phrase splitting more of the powers actually means. It's not like new powers are being created here. They'll just be taking the existing powers and attempting to decide which is best for path A and which is best for path B. And then your options will be divided in 2. Alright. significant changes to tanking and healing, powerful healing spells, redesigned guard. Again, this is something that I touched on back in October after the Reddit AMA. We know for a fact that they just want their tanks to tank and the healers just to heal. They've said this many times before, and they say it again here when they explain that they're removing the why they're removing the lifesteal stat. So the summary is, if you're classified as a healer, don't expect to do anything other than watch health bars and keep people alive. You're healing. If you're a tank, don't expect to do anything other than hold aggro and absorb damage. This means don't expect to share power, don't expect to buff, don't expect to do damage, don't expect to reduce people's cooldowns, don't expect to increase your team's movement speed, and don't expect to discover one day that your class is so much more complex than you ever imagined and that you'll be contributing to the party in ways that are groundbreaking and innovative outside of the box from your conventional cookie-cutter MMORPG. No, you show up and you do exactly what the traditional definition of your class is expected to do. You heal, you tank, you DPS, that's it. Okay. An opposing roles system. Ooh. Summary here. An opposing roles system is it means your stats versus the enemy stats all across the board. This is going to make the game very cheap and very easy to balance moving forward. Players getting too strong? Increase the opposing values of all enemies by 10%. Easy. The problem here is that this is no different than how things already are. This is just a more complicated version of it. In case you couldn't tell, I put complicated in quotes there. Complicated. We always had an opposing role system, but it was in the form of armor pen versus enemy damage resistance. Now we just have 2 more stats to cap and then forget about. Instead of reaching 100% armor pen and moving on with our lives, now we match armor pen with defense, crit with crit avoidance, accuracy with awareness, or if you're tank, the other way around. Make sure your defensive stats beat their offensive stats and you're good. Walk away, forget about it. Okay, yeah, never mind the fact that it may be very easy for someone to max both offensive and defensive stats, completely negating for the need for a tank altogether. I won't go into that. Alright, critical strike is now capped at 50%. Summary: no matter how much crit you have, your crit will never crit. You will never crit more than half the time. Problem: this means critical damage is now entirely based on RNG, even after you've min-maxed your crit stat. I don't think I need to say much more than that. Okay, stats removed from Neverwinter. Recovery. Summary here: your cooldowns are essentially set in stone and may only be affected by either certain pieces of gear or potentially feats. Don't know yet. The problem: Neverwinter has become a fast-paced game, and this is going to affect the overall momentum of the game, the pace. In the past, recovery was a stat that players could invest in depending on the class they played, or how they wanted to play it. If they were DPS, it would be a lower priority stat to invest in, overpower for example. As a support class, it might be a higher priority stat. But players had options about where to invest their stats and what decisions to make when looking for gear. With the opposing roles system now, there's nothing worth investing in after you max your tune, except for power. No tweaking or min-maxing required, just meet the opposing role values and move on. Again, less decisions, very simplified. Quote here: our goal, balance to the game. No matter what class a player ultimately chooses to pick, they have a great experience playing it. Sounds good. But basically this means your choices are now our choices, and all of those choices are equal. It's yet another telling sign that buffs and power share are just going to be gone. In case there wasn't enough evidence staring you in the face already, as literally the only thing that gives a class an advantage over another class is how much they bring to the table in terms of unique buffs. DCs have unique buffs, SWs have unique buffs, OPs have unique buffs. But if they all have unique buffs, that would give them all a clear advantage when deciding who to bring to your party. So how do you balance the buffs of your 3 healing classes to make them all equal? You remove them. Take away the buffs. Easy. But Again, the problem is they won't be equal. Equality is a myth, and metas have always existed in every game ever, no exception. Give us 2 or 3 weeks at the most to figure out which class has the highest DPS ceiling. It's not like it's going to be hard to figure out. There aren't even feat trees anymore. Guess what happens as soon as we figure out which class has the highest DPS? That's right, we want that class and only that class. What happens when all healers are equal and their job specifically to heal? Then their effectiveness within a party becomes their ability to both heal and provide DPS. So as soon as we figure out which healer has the highest DPS output, that's right, we want that healer and only that healer. Same goes for tanks. Which tank can hold aggro and do damage? That's the tank we want, assuming there's a need for tanks at all. So, looking at this as a whole and reading in between the lines, I can tell you right now that whatever Mod 16 brings our way, it will be a very watered down, simplified version of the game as we know it. Will the game still be fun? Probably, but it will not be fun in the same way. This whole balance and equality idea is super great and all, but the problem is it just isn't realistic. We'll figure out what works best and then we'll use it, just how we always have since the beginning of time. Does the game need a complete overhaul and a blanket nerf of all classes so it can fall more in line with the traditional MMORPG experience? Yeah, maybe. But where does the motivation for these changes really come from? Is it actually a search for balance to make gameplay experience more enjoyable? Or is the goal simplicity for the sake of making the game easier to manage? When all players are special, that's just a way of saying nobody's special. When everyone has equal value, nobody is actually valuable. I and many other people have been preaching about the dangers of letting a marketing team run the company for a very long time. But when a game is free to play, that means the players are the product that a company makes money from. I spent money on this game about 3 years ago, before I understood how games like this work. I was addicted to the sense of accomplishment that I felt when progressing. Like any other addiction, I rationalized it, saying, well, time is money, and right now I make a lot of money, but I only have a little bit of time, so I spent money on the game. I continued telling myself things like, I used to spend $60 a week buying other games, but now I play this game only. Or, since I started playing more and going out less, I'm actually saving money. Or, at least it's spending money on something that's healthy and I'm not doing drugs. Or, it's an investment, because when I'm top tier, more people will invite me, and I'll start making money in the game more easily, and I'll never have to invest again. So over time, I spent a few $1,000s, and I was finally what I considered to be one of the best Guardian fighters on the server, back when ITF was uncapped and I was rocking Knight's Captain gear, and for a time I was in really high demand, and I was doing amazing game-breaking things in every single party I was in. But that's when my class got nerfed. Everything I'd worked toward and all the money I spent was devalued overnight. I haven't spent a dollar since. It will always be cheaper for the company to make the players weaker than to increase the difficulty or complexity of the content. And the longer they can drag out the content and slow your progression or set it back, the more likely they'll be to be able to control the economy and extend the lifespan of the game. Maybe if they had a bigger dev team or a higher budget, this wouldn't be the case. But as it is, backwards is the new forwards, at least in terms of games controlled by marketing teams. But it won't be enough for them. They will simplify the game to the point where it can be managed by just one developer, so that it costs as little as possible to maintain. And then who knows, maybe they'll just fire everyone else, or they'll reassign those people to other money-making projects where they can exploit an entirely different audience that needs to progress for their money. Personally, I don't buy the whole balance thing, and I'm 90% sure whatever changes are coming our way aren't about improving player experience, but about making the game simple and cost-effective to maintain. But let me know what you think. And expect to get onto test server as quickly as possible. I'll have a link with the information of how to get into the test servers below, but show up to the test servers day one, start testing this, start giving feedback. It's going to be really important that every single person out there is on that preview server immediately. Test everything out. Let them know right away what you like, what you don't like, because they need to hear everyone's honest opinion about the changes they're making before they go live. This is very important. Okay, I'll see you out there. Bye-bye.